Brilliant. Well, thank you for joining us for the first of the FPUK 2025 Christmas events. Tonight, the wonderful Ink Pour are our sponsors, and one lucky person will be picked at random to receive a Christmas personalised letter set in either robin, holly, or mistletoe. We're also very lucky to have the Writing Equipment Society as the sponsor of the FPUK Zoom account. Tonight, we are joined by Alison Hitchcock from the From Me to You Letters charity. From Me to You Letters is a UK charity that combats loneliness in people with cancer by connecting them with letter writers, providing comfort and distraction through a Donate a Letter scheme. Let me hand you over to Alison so she can tell you all about it and how you can get involved.
Thank you, Stephanie. And hello, everybody. I'm Alison Hitchcock. Some of you know me already. So hello, Dominic. Hello, Tom and Al, because two sets of great supporters of our charity. But I think many of you will have supported us over the last few years. You did an amazing auction for us. Or many of you write as well, because we get so many people who sign up and say that they've heard about us through somebody in your group. So thank you so much for all of your support. So tonight I'm going to tell you the story of From Me to You, and I've got a few short videos to play you as well, just to demonstrate the impact really that letters can have. But before I start, this talk is light-hearted. However, it is about cancer. Cancer is a sensitive subject. So I'm just going to put into chat the Macmillan helpline number. That is available to anyone. You don't have to have cancer to contact Macmillan. If you are in any way touched or affected by cancer, they are there to support you 24/7. So that number is there for you. And if at any time you just need to step away from the talk, turn your video off, or just leave, that's fine. We completely understand. However, this, as I say, this will be a light-hearted chat. So, as Steph said, From Me to You is a charity which was set up to alleviate the isolation and loneliness of cancer by trying to connect people via letter writing. And I will come on to tell you where that idea came from, the story behind it, and then what we actually do to make that live in the world. But before I do that, I wonder if I could just ask you to go onto chat and just tell me who, if you could write a letter to anybody. It can be somebody who's alive, somebody who's dead, somebody famous, somebody not famous. Just jump on chat and just tell me who the person is. You don't have to say why. Just tell me who is that person in your life. So Wendy is saying her dad. Nice. Oh, Steph's dad as well. Dad's a popular tonight. Oh, George is my dad and my grandfather. Oh, that's a hat trick of males receiving letters. My friend Lindsay, my grandfather. He brought me up. Nice. My grandparents. Anybody else? We always, my mum, while she still remembers me, that's very touching. My granddad Joe. When we used to ask this question before the pandemic, people would always write a famous person, dead or alive, but they would always want to write a letter to a famous person. And then since the pandemic, probably when we ask this question, probably 80% of people write down that they would send a letter to either a family member or a close friend, but as sort of a person in their lives. It's hardly ever a famous person anymore. So thank you for that. And you've all gone for family or close friends, and lots of men. We get more of a mix, but lots of people wanting to write to their fathers or their grandfathers, which is nice. So thank you for that. So let me tell you about From Me to You. So our story starts actually back in 2009, and I was on a yoga holiday in India with Brian Greenlee, But I didn't know Brian. I'd gone on the yoga holiday on my own, and so had he. And we didn't really have very much in common. I had gone on the holiday to relax. I worked in the city. I knew exactly why I was there. I was there to relax. And Brian, as far as I could tell, didn't seem to know why he was there. So I thought that he was quite flaky. He thought that I was completely up myself. So we didn't really bond at all on the holiday until the last class. And we were in the yoga lesson on mats at the back of the class. And we were both in headstand. And at the same time, we both heard each other fart. And we crashed to our mats, howling with laughter, and realized that actually we had a couple of things in common. One was issues with Indian curry, and the other thing was just a silly sense of humor. And so we said that when we got back to the UK, we'd meet up and we'd have a drink. But of course, you say these things and then kind of life gets in the way. And so it's probably 6 months later, and we'd only met up a couple of times. And we met up in London to have a drink. And just 3 days before, Brian had been diagnosed with stage 3 bowel cancer. And but he wasn't going to tell me because he didn't really know me that well. But as we were chatting, the only thing in his head was that he had cancer. And so he just blurted it out. And I felt really awkward. I felt quite helpless, but I did not know what to say. I didn't really know him that well, so I wasn't going to say that I would take him to hospital appointments. I certainly wasn't going to inflict any kind of home baking on him because I didn't know where he lived. And also, I mean, I'm no cook at all. So I heard myself make this really bizarre offer that I was going to write letters to him to cheer him up through his treatment. So he said, "Oh, you're a letter writer." And I said, "Oh, no, I work in the city. I haven't really got time for letters." So he went home thinking, "She'll never write. She's weird." And I went home thinking, "I'll never write. I'm weird." But for the next 2 weeks, it really niggled me that I'd said that I'd write. This man had cancer. I felt like I ought to do something. And so after 2 weeks, I sat down one evening on my sofa with a big glass of wine and I started to write a letter. And I just wrote about very everyday things. I wasn't clever in my letters. I wasn't philosophical. I just wrote about the things that had happened to me or things, conversations I'd overheard in cafes. And I posted the letter, having had a really lovely 40 minutes sitting writing a letter. I'd felt very mindful. I'd felt like I was doing something good for somebody else. And also I felt like I was being quite creative. And that was the first of over 100 letters that I wrote to Brian over the next 2.5 to 3 years, as his cancer moved from stage 3 to stage 4. He had chemotherapy, he had radiotherapy, he had 4 lots of surgery, he had an ileostomy bag, and his life completely changed. And at first, because we didn't know each other that well, at first he would just text me and say, "Oh, your letters arrived, really enjoyed it, thank you very much." But I was really enjoying writing the letters because it was kind of like a form of journaling, I suppose, but it was real time for me to kind of be creative. And so I kept writing, and then eventually the text moved on to a phone call every now and again. And then eventually he invited me around to his house one day for lunch. And so over time, as the letters went on, we became more and more friendly. And I think that I was probably showing a different side of myself to him, or probably revealing more about myself, because the letters, it felt a very safe space to share things. And he was getting to know me in quite a different way to how somebody else would, who was a friend, and perhaps we'd meet and chat. So after a while, he started to share with me that one of the most unexpected side effects of his cancer was how lonely he was. Now, Brian lived with his partner. He had a lot of family, a lot of friends, But he said the one thing that he hadn't expected to feel was quite as isolated. He said, I'm not going to work anymore. I'm not really socializing because my immune system's suppressed. And also, I can't bear the pity that people, on people's face, that head tilt and that look when they ask me how I am. And he said, and I have nothing to say to them other than I have cancer. And so he said, so not only am I not mixing with people, but I'm actually withdrawing myself from people. And then he said, the saddest thing of all is the people who he thought would be there for him, but they never know what to say. So they just didn't say anything. And he shared with me that my letters were this, he was finding this amazing connection through my letters back to a world that he was feeling increasingly disconnected from, because he wasn't part of the world anymore. He was stuck at home with daytime TV for a lot of the time. And if he wasn't doing that, he was at a hospital appointment or in a chemotherapy chair. And he said some people would phone and some people would text, and that was great. But he said those phone calls, those texts, they came in at a time when he might not be feeling lonely. But that was if he'd have to take the call when it came in. But he said my letters would land on his doormat and he could choose when he opened them. And he would save the letters, he said, till a time of the day when he knew that he'd feel a bit low and on his own. Or he'd save them till he was going into hospital for his chemotherapy and he was going to sit all day in the chemotherapy chair on his own. And he would then open the letters when he chose to read them. And it would be like I was there kind of with him, chatting away to him. And of course, I had no idea that this was the impact that my letters were having on him. Because I was just loving writing them. I was just really loving I suppose the art and the craft of letter writing. But so when I heard that actually they were really helping him as well, I was like delighted. But I guess I was really surprised that somebody who had as many friends and family as Brian did could still feel really alone. So then my letters carried on to 2013, and quite a few things happened in 2013. So in 2013, I got married. Brian and I by then were such good friends that he came on my hen weekend. And I had started an MA in creative writing because I had so loved writing the letters that it had led on to me writing short stories. The best thing that happened in 2013 was that Brian was given his first all clear from stage 4 bowel cancer. Now, I'm sure that Brian would have loved to have been here today, but Brian goes on holiday a lot now. So right now, Brian's in California because since 2013, Brian has basically been living his best life. He had a less than 10% chance of survival. And yet 12 years on, Brian is still with us. So after 2013, kind of life went back to normal. Brian went back to work. I gave up working in the city and I went to work for a literary organisation and I was doing my writing. And then in 2016, we were recorded for the BBC's The Listening Project, which you may remember used to be aired on BBC Radio 4. And they recorded us talking about my letters and our friendship. And they aired it on Christmas Day, 2016. And it just happened that a neighbour of mine heard us talking on the radio. And he said to me, oh, I have a friend who's got cancer. They're in Australia. Can I steal your idea and start writing to them? And I said, well, it's not really my idea, but yes, of course you can. And then 2 weeks later, he came back to me and said, what do you write to somebody who's got cancer? How do you write a letter to somebody who's got cancer? And I told this story to Brian, and Brian said, well, we have to do something about this. And that was how we started the charity From Me to You. And we began the charity our first aim was to say to people, if you have someone in your life who is living with cancer and you don't quite know what to do to support them, or you perhaps don't know what to say to them, the worst thing you can do is to do nothing. But you can connect with them by doing something as simple as sending them a card or a letter. And we started holding workshops. We had a website that we put up, kind of do's and don'ts for writing. And we started holding it in-person workshops. And gradually, as the months went on, people started to say, oh, I'd like to write a letter to someone who has cancer, but I don't know anyone. And that is when we started our Donate a Letter program. And our Donate a Letter program invites people from all over the world to write anonymous letters. And when we say anonymous, what we mean is that you don't put your address on there, you don't put your email, you don't put anything in the letter where somebody could Google and identify you. So people write anonymous letters, they send them to us, we read them, we filter them, we repackage them, and then we have relationships with hospital centres and cancer centres across the UK, and we distribute those letters to oncology wards, to haematology wards, to outpatient cancer centres, and to people who are living with cancer at home and who request letters from us. And we had been delivering each year 10,000 letters. Last year we delivered 13,500 letters, and this year we are on course to deliver 15,000 letters, which is incredible. You know, when Brian and I think that it all started with me just feeling a little bit awkward and not knowing what to say to him. And people write all sorts of things in their letters, but the more everyday the topics, the better, because they're the things that we all have in common. So when people write about the seasons or their pets or their childhood memories of holidays, or at the moment everybody's writing about Christmas disasters and presents that they didn't want, and the turkey dinner that was a nightmare, and the dog that somebody was given, which a dog is, you know, for life, not for Christmas. And here we are, however many years down the line, and we've still got the dog, which we adore, but we've never imagined that we'd really get one for Christmas. So we've lots and lots of winter themed letters that we're getting. And people don't say clever things. They don't talk about cancer. They just chat. And they chat with the person who's receiving the letter. Now, most of the people who receive the letters, we don't know who they are. But every week we receive feedback from people who've received the letters, thanking us for the letter, telling us how much it brightened their day, telling us how much it changed their mood. And I think my favourite piece of feedback was once when a lady phoned me and said, for the moments that I was reading the letter, I felt normal. And I thought, wow, if you can do that for somebody in a letter, that is incredible. So what I'd like to do now is to play you 3 really short videos of 3 letter recipients. And they're just a minute long each, talking about what it felt like for them to receive a letter from a stranger. And the first one, if I just share my screen. Oh, but also I've got a photo. So this is Brian. There's Brian living his best life with his dog Colin. So the first letter recipient is Anne. Now Anne lives in Northern Ireland. She also writes letters for our Donate a Letter programme, as well as receiving them. And Anne received a letter just before she went into hospital. And she's here telling us what that letter meant to her once she'd gone into hospital.
In my bag, I had my latest letter from me to you. That was one of the most important things that I packed It was beautiful. She had written and stuck in photographs of her dog. She lived in Cornwall and she was writing from this Cornish beach. And her letter was so full of ordinary joys. And I thought, I read it and reread it, I memorized parts of it, and I thought, hopefully I'll be able to walk my dog on a beach again soon. And so that was what her letter did to me. It reminded me that I wasn't alone, even though I was alone in the hospital. I wasn't on my own. It reminded me that somebody thought so much of me that she gave up her time. Somebody I'd never met, never would meet, gave up her time to write lovely things.
And then let me play. This is Jose. So Jose came to one of our online workshops and he asked if he could tell his story. When he came on the workshop, I didn't know who he was. We hold online workshops every other month for new writers to kind of guide them through their first letter, because it's quite daunting. Everybody loves the idea of writing a letter, but when you actually sit down and think, okay, not only am I writing to someone with cancer, I'm writing to a stranger. But Jose asked if he could tell his story. And this is Jose's story.
So I lost my son 3 months ago. He had brain tumor, sorry. But he was diagnosed 3 years ago. And one of my friends at work nominated him for your letters. So, I mean, he used to receive them quite regularly. And he kept all of them. So they were all really, really precious to him. And like Brian did, he came back to them. And towards the end, I mean, this year in particular, he wasn't able to read anymore. So he would ask me to read them for him. And if you could see it, he would just light up. And some of those letters weren't just letters. Some of them came with little freebies in them. There was one person sent him a little bunny, small little pink bunny. It's about that big, and he kept it with him all the time. So I mean, they really, really meant the world to him. When the first one arrived, I mean, he was like, "But this person doesn't know me." But oh my God, you could see it. It really lit him up that this person who doesn't know him from a bar of soap said these things almost personally to him. So yeah, they really, really made a difference to him. So much that I want to give my time now to do the same.
And that's what Jose does now, sort of in memory of his son. He now writes letters that we send off to other people. And then our third video, this is Louise. And Louise had been receiving letters, and also she was another person who had decided that she also wanted to write letters. But I think Louise really captures what a letter can mean to someone, and that it really doesn't matter what you write about, because it's the kind of the intention that's behind the letter.
There's lots of different support groups and things that are out there for people with cancer, and it is a really good way for people to be able to connect. But what irritates me the most is a head tilt and a sympathetic look on someone's face, like that, oh I can't, that really, I don't need your sympathy, I'm being dealt with, thanks very much, and it's really lovely, but come on now, I need something positive. And these letters are that little pinch of positive. They could be anything, absolutely anything. And I know I did one of the writing workshops and it was talking about a pumpkin or an orange, and you can talk about anything and just change the title of what it is to dear friend. And you know, it's that, yeah, pinch of positive in terms of it takes you away from it. Obviously, funnily enough, I can't forget that I've got cancer, but these letters make me feel a little bit better in the time it takes to read it and know that somebody's taken the time to do it. That's really important.
So in a moment, I'm going to invite if anybody has any questions. But before I do that, let me just, because we often are asked, well, how do you write to somebody you don't know? Or how do you write to someone who's living with cancer in your own life? So we have it's a very, very simple guide. If you sign up for our donate donate a letter program, we send you out a letter writing pack, which helps you. But I think this is, if you're wanting to write to anybody, this is a great format. But if you're writing to someone where it's difficult to write to them, and I always say, choose a theme first, and then find an anecdote within your theme. So for many workshops recently, winter has been our theme. And people have remembered anecdotes or come up with anecdotes to do with winter. The thing that always stalls people and when they're writing a letter is, how do I start? How do I start? And I always say, remember that the opening line, the first line, is the line which is least remembered in a letter. Because actually everybody wants to get to the juicy bit in the middle, the story that you're telling. Nobody cares about your opening line. In the same way that if you go to a drinks party and somebody introduces themselves, and it might be a little bit clumsy how they introduce themselves, but if they then become a fantastic storyteller, you're transfixed with them at the party, and you go away remembering their story. You don't remember their perhaps slightly clumsy hello. But we have opening lines. I've put a couple up there, which just show how simple it is to start a letter. And then you share your anecdote. And in sharing your anecdote, you're kind of sharing something about yourself. We say don't give cancer advice, don't talk about religion, because you don't know the faith of the person. But obviously, if it's for someone in your own life, then that will be fine. And we say, and don't say get well soon, because you don't know the prognosis of the person. But everything else is fine. And as I say, the more mundane, the more everyday, the more it resonates. But then in order to kind of double the power of your letter, then we say in your final paragraph, ask a question that is to do with the anecdote that you've been writing about, because that invites your reader to go into their imagination. You're not asking the question because they're going to write back. Brian never wrote back to me at all. Through all of my 100 letters, he never wrote back. But that's because he said, I've got cancer, I've got nothing to say. So when you're asking the question, you're just inviting them to go to somewhere else in their imagination. Or if they're in hospital, what we often hear is that the letters are handed round visitors, because often you've got nothing to say to somebody when you're in hospital and you go visiting, and it's all can be a little bit awkward. And people use the letters, and then they all talk about answering the question that the letter has posed. And then at the end, people just simply sign off with thinking of you or wishing you all the best. And if it's for our Donate a Letter program, people will then just sign off their first name or their initial. When people send their letters to us, they tell us who they are, but they don't put it in the letter. So everybody's privacy is completely safeguarded. So I have another video to share with you. Are we okay for time, Steph? Is that okay? Yeah. But does anybody, before I go on to share the next video with you, does anybody have any questions? I'll just stop sharing for a moment. Just either shout them out, put them in chat. If anybody has any questions.
You mentioned about letter writing classes or workshops. What are they about?
So when people sign up for Donate a Letter, they're often quite daunted. So we do online workshops where we kind of walk people through. So we tell them the story of From Me to You, and then we walk them through their first letter, so that by the end of the workshop, they've actually written their first letter. And it's always the first letter that's the hardest, whether it's for somebody you know or not. So by the end of the workshop, they will have a letter that they can then post off to our PO box. And then they're off and running.
Fantastic.
We also have, for World Cancer Day in February, we run a 24-hour letter writing marathon, which is where we host an online space for 24 hours, so that anybody from wherever you are in the world, you can jump on, you can stay for as long as you like. but at a time that's convenient for you. There are people hosting each hour. And you come on and you just use the space and write letters, either for us or for someone in your own life who has cancer. And so we'll be holding, I think it's February the 7th, 2026, to mark World Cancer Day. We'll be holding our next 24-hour letter writing marathon. And last year we did actually have somebody who stayed on for the whole 24 hours, which was incredible. Any other questions before I just play another video for you? Okay, let me go back. So the next video I want to play, oh, that's our website. So there's everything you need to know about us on our website. And you can go and visit that at frommetwoletters.co.uk. So people, they like the idea of writing a letter to a stranger, but they can't quite imagine quite what the impact of a letter will be, or quite how to write it. So we had some actors who voiced over some actual letters that had been written to our Donate a Letter programme. So this is another short video just to show you. I think what's really nice is that you can just sit and listen to the letters and imagine how you would feel if you were receiving these letters.
Dear fellow human, for a world that gives us so much good stuff, it sure does dish out some difficult stuff. I hope you're being well looked after. I thought I'd share a list of the little things that have made me smile this week, in case maybe they'd make you smile too. 1. They've resurfaced a road that I drive on to work, so I no longer have to play dodge the pothole. I like to pretend I'm the first driver on it. 2. Frozen lemon zest exists in Tesco.
3. I almost hit a deer. Key word is almost, so hurrah to the deer for surviving the dash. 4. Galaxy golden eggs. They've brought pleasure both before and after Easter, and probably 2 stone on my hips. 5. No queue at the post office. 6. I met a man who was very passionate about rabbits. I need to find the thing that makes me feel that way. What's your thing? There are so many people rooting for you, including this stranger. Sending good vibes from my coordinates to yours. Helen.
Hello. I heard you were in hospital through the From Me to You letters, so I thought I'd drop you a line to say hi. I'm currently at home playing YouTube music to my dog. Yes, they even have music for dogs. They say it helps them to sleep. Not sure it's helping her, but it's definitely relaxing me. Maybe it's a secret plan to send me to sleep so she can go wild.
I've had a day off today, so I've had a chance to do all those jobs that sit on the to-do list for months, because they're just not interesting. While I say I've had a chance to do all these jobs, I haven't actually done any of them. They're just not interesting enough. I will sign off now. I hope you are getting the best possible care and lots of tea. I think tea can help, whatever the situation. Wishing you well, Dan.
Hello. It is a beautifully sunny day, and I am in my local library. I have been thinking about what I could write and tell you, and now it has come to me. I'm going to tell you about a raisin. Yes, that is what I said, a raisin. Last year I attended a course as part of my job, and during the day they talked to us about mindfulness. We each had to take a raisin, look at it, smell it, listen to it. I rolled mine in my fingers and against my face. I was transported back to my children's childhoods. I always carried small boxes of raisins as snacks. I remember having loose raisins in my pockets, raisins in their buggies, raisins in their nappies. When I returned home after the course, I gave my teenage children a kiss
and my twins a hug. Small objects can bring up memories. I thought about my parents and what I associated them with. My mum loved cooking. At Christmas, the house was filled with the smells of fruitcake and mince pies. My dad is a reader and always has a book on the go. I wondered what people would think when they thought of me. Maybe books, walks on the beach, probably not raisins. What would you think about when you remember people close to you? Something unusual, perhaps. And what would remind them of you? I wish you well and hope that you're comfortable. Stephanie.
Hello. I don't know who you are, what you're interested in, or how you're feeling today. But I do know how it feels when someone holds out their hand to you in the dark. This letter is me reaching out my hand to yours. I hope you're comfortable and warm. Very underrated, I find. And I hope this letter gives you something to brighten your day. Be strong and continue to be amazing. You matter to everyone who knows you. My very best wishes, from me to you.
So that, I hope that has given you a sense of how powerful a letter can be and how it can create connections for us. And before I go, I have one final ask. So we know it's Christmas, and we have this year thousands of letters and cards to get out to people who are spending Christmas in hospital. And I think we can all recognise that that is not a place where anyone wants to spend Christmas, but that costs us money. But we have teamed up with the Big Give so that every donation that we receive this year will be doubled. So we were planning to send out 4,000 letters, but we reached our target for that. So, but we managed this morning to get some more match funding. So we've managed to push our target up to 13,500, which will then take us into January letters as well. So I think Steph is probably going to put the link up to our donation page as well. But if you possibly can, and you can donate, just anything that you can donate will be incredible because it will be doubled.
I've actually put the link into the group.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And so unless there are any other questions, that is my very, very speedy run through of everything from me to you, letter writing.
Any more questions? That was fantastic, Alison, and really inspiring.
Oh, good, good. It's such a simple thing, and the charity is an absolute joy to run, because it's positive. It's bringing a lot of positivity into something that I think so many of us now are touched by in some way. And it's something that so many people can get involved with. I mean, we even have Duke of Edinburgh students who use us for their volunteer module, because they can sit at home and every month they write letters that we then send off. They're gold or silver or bronze award. Yeah. So thank you so much for having me today, and thank you so much for listening, and thank you to your group for all the support that you've given us over the last few years, because it has been absolutely incredible.
Our pleasure. Just before I stop the recording, I'll do the number generator, and the number is 14, which my little list, that's the lovely Ross. So if you want to drop, if you want to drop me your address, I will pass that on to the boys from the Inked Paw, and you've won a personalised letter set in the Christmas subject of your choice. And I will stop the recording now.